You know, in the world of business to business, there's a huge shift happening right under our noses. It's this move away from just making great products to really, truly understanding the people who use them. It's called customer centricity. And based on some fascinating new research, we're going to break down the playbook for companies that want to make this leap.
So let's just kick things off with a really fundamental question. Why do so many B2B companies, even the huge ones, get their customers so wrong? You'd think that would be the first thing they get right, but the old way of doing business, well, it has some pretty deep and, as we're about to see, very costly flaws.
And this right here, this really gets to the heart of it. The old school product-centric way of thinking is all about looking in the mirror. Companies think, hey, we know our factories inside and out, we're experts on our features, let's just be as efficient as we can be. But the customer-centric view, it flips that completely on its head. It starts by looking out the window, asking, who are our customers? What problems are they actually trying to solve? Suddenly, success isn't about internal metrics anymore. It's all about the value the customer gets. That old way of thinking creates a massive blind spot.
And hey, this isn't just some theory. A senior manager at a global manufacturing firm said it perfectly. He said, "We know our factories, but not the business customers and the millions of farmers out there." I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That's an incredible admission. They are absolute masters of production, but they woke up and realized they were completely disconnected from the very people they were supposed to be serving.
Right, so that disconnect, that's what the research calls the B2B blind spot. And let's be super clear here. This isn't just a philosophical difference. It is a genuine competitive disadvantage in today's market.
So if the old way is broken, what's actually forcing companies to change? Well, the research points to 4 huge wake-up calls from the outside world that are making that product-first model pretty much obsolete.
First up, it's the customers themselves. B2B buyers these days are way more sophisticated. They're not just buying a thing, they're buying a solution, an outcome. At the same time, your competition is getting fiercer, and guess who's winning? The companies that are the best listeners. On top of that, you've got this explosion in technology that lets us understand customer needs in ways we never could before. And finally, as businesses go global, they're realizing that a one-size-fits-all product just doesn't cut it anymore. What works in one country might totally flop in another.
So, with all this pressure to change, you need a new game plan. We've been throwing this term around, customer centricity, but what does it actually mean?
The research defines it as a strategy to fundamentally align a company's products and services with the wants and needs of its most valuable customers. Now, there are 2 really crucial parts of that. First, fundamentally align. This is not a marketing campaign, okay? It's a deep structural change to the core of the business. And second, most valuable customers. This is about being strategic. It's not about trying to be everything to everyone.
And to see how this plays out in the real world, listen to this from a manager at a service solutions firm. Our first and most important collaborator is the customer. This belief defines our orientation. Wow, that's powerful, right? It stops being just a business strategy and becomes the entire company's DNA.
Okay, this all sounds great, but let's get real. Any business leader worth their salt is going to ask the tough question. Does this actually make the company more money? Does it really improve the bottom line?
Well, the research has a pretty compelling answer. Let's take the case of a Chinese steel manufacturer that decided to go all in on this. The first result? A 4% boost in their gross margins. Not bad.
But that was just the beginning. They also saw their pre-tax profits jump by a whopping 8%. So the answer to the question is a huge yes. When you do this right, it's not just some feel-good initiative. It directly impacts the numbers.
Okay, so we know what customer centricity is and why it matters. Now for the hard part, the million-dollar question. How do you actually do it? It all starts with designing the strategy. And luckily, the research gives us a really clear look at what helps and what hurts during this critical planning phase. So what sets you up for success at this stage? It really boils down to a few key things. It has to start with culture and vision. The entire company needs to be rowing in the same direction, and that direction is towards the customer. Then it's about structure. You've got to break down those silos between departments so everyone's talking and working together. And finally, it's about knowledge and belief. You need to know your customers inside and out, and just as important, your employees have to believe this change is not just necessary, but a good thing. And what holds companies back? Well, no surprise here, it's the inertia of the old way of doing things. A culture that's just obsessed with its own products and processes is always going to fight this.
You see it as a fixation on internal efficiency instead of customer value, decision-making that's just too slow and clunky to react, and this obsession with cost-cutting that completely misses what customers are actually willing to pay for.
You know, having a great strategy on paper is one thing, but making it a reality across an entire organization, that's a whole other ballgame. This is where the real work begins, and it's often the hardest part of the entire journey. The study highlights one factor that is absolutely critical during implementation, and it's got a bit of an academic name: customer voice heterogeneity. It sounds complicated, but trust me, the idea is simple. It's the challenge of managing all the different, varied, and sometimes conflicting feedback you get from all your different customers. They don't all speak with one voice.
So how do you deal with this chorus of different customer voices? It really comes down to three things. It has to start at the very top, with leaders who don't just talk the talk, but visibly walk the walk every single day. That then gives employees on the front lines the power to make the right call for the customer. And finally, the company needs systems to actually listen to and make sense of all that diverse feedback.
And what completely torpedoes a great strategy? The number one killer is a lack of real, genuine commitment from leadership. If they don't truly believe in it, nobody else will. The other killer is internal friction. When departments aren't collaborating, they form these silos, and every single one of those silos acts like a wall between the company and its customer.
All right, we've gone from the big why all the way down to the nitty-gritty of how. So what does this all add up to? The research pulls it all together into a really clear, actionable playbook for any B2B leader out there.
And here it is, the entire playbook in a nutshell. It's a journey of two phases. First, you design the strategy, and second, you make it real. And at each step, you're doing two things at once. You're nurturing the enablers, like a supportive culture and strong leadership, while you're actively tearing down the barriers, like that rigid product mindset and those internal silos. It's all about building the new while dismantling the old.
You know, all of this analysis, all these frameworks, it really boils down to one simple but incredibly powerful question to ask yourself. Is your organization built to listen, or is it just built to sell? The honest answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about the journey ahead.